On December 31st, 2025, I walked out of my office in Omaha for the last time as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. 60 years. 60 years of building. 60 years of investing. 60 years of learning. And as I left, I did not give a long speech. I did not hold a press conference. I left behind something far more powerful than words. I left behind $373 billion in cash. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would the greatest investor in history be sitting on $373 billion in cash? Why would a man who has spent his entire life putting money to work suddenly stop investing? Why would someone who once said, "Our favorite holding period is forever," suddenly sell $187 billion worth of stocks? The answer to those questions is the most important financial warning of our time. And today, I want to explain exactly what that warning means for you. Let me start from the beginning. For 13 consecutive quarters, from October 2022 all the way to December 2025, Berkshire Hathaway was a net seller of stocks. 13 quarters. Every single quarter for over 3 years, selling more than buying. In total, we sold $186.7 billion more in stocks than we purchased. That is not a small number. That is not a minor adjustment to a portfolio. That is a deliberate and calculated message to the market. You see, I have always believed that actions speak louder than words. I could give speeches, I could write letters, I could go on television and warn people. But nothing says what I want to say more clearly than this. When I cannot find value in the market, I stop buying. And for 3 straight years, I could not find enough value to put our money to work. Now, let me tell you what happened to our cash during those 3 years. When we started selling in late 2022, our cash was around $100 billion. By the end of 2025, that cash had more than tripled. $373.3 billion, the largest cash reserve in the history of Berkshire Hathaway, the largest cash reserve I have ever held in 60 years of investing. Now, I want to talk about something very important. There's a number I have used my entire investing life to understand whether the stock market is cheap or expensive. First, I talked about it publicly in a 2001 interview with Fortune magazine. I called it probably the best single measure of where valuations stand at any given moment. Today, people call it the Buffett Indicator. The Buffett Indicator measures the total value of all publicly traded companies in America compared to the size of the entire American economy. Historically, over the last 68 years, this number has averaged around 87%. That means normally the stock market is worth about 87 cents for every dollar of economic activity in America. When this number goes well above 100%, it means stocks are getting expensive. When it goes above 150%, it means stocks are dangerously overvalued. In January 2026, the Buffett Indicator hit 224%. 224%. The highest level ever recorded in history. Higher than before the dot-com crash in 2000, higher than before the 2008 financial crisis, higher than any point in modern financial history. When I see a number like that, I do not need anyone to tell me to be careful. And it's not just the Buffett Indicator sending this warning. There's another number called the Shiller price-to-earnings ratio. It measures how expensive stocks are compared to their actual earnings over 10 years. Historically, this ratio has averaged 17.3 over 150 years of data. Right now, it's sitting between 39 and 41. The S&P 500 has only been this expensive 3% of its time in its entire 68-year history. So let me put all of this together very simply. The stock market right now is more expensive relative to the economy than it has ever been in history. Corporate earnings do not justify these prices. Economic growth does not justify these prices. And yet prices keep going up. And people keep buying. This is the very definition of what I have warned about my entire career. I've seen this before. In the late 1990s, everyone was buying technology stocks. Companies with no revenue, no profits, and no business model were worth billions of dollars. People called it the new economy. They said the old rules of investing no longer applied. I refused to buy, and for a while I looked foolish. And then in 2000, the whole thing collapsed. Trillions of dollars disappeared. I'm not saying history will repeat itself exactly. I never make precise predictions about when markets will crash. Nobody can. But what I am saying is this. When you see valuations this extreme, when you see the smartest money in the world sitting in cash, when you see every major warning indicator flashing red, that is not the time to be reckless. That is the time to be thoughtful. And that is exactly what $373 billion is saying. Now I want to talk directly to you. I know what you are thinking. Warren, you are a billionaire. You can afford to sit in cash. What about the rest of us? And that is a fair point. Your situation is different from mine. But the principles behind what I did are principles that any investor can apply. Let me share 3 things I want you to think about right now. First, understand what you own. If you are invested in stocks right now, do you actually understand the businesses behind those stocks? Do you know how they make money? Do you know if their earnings justify their current price? If the answer is no, then you are not investing, you are gambling. And gambling at the top of the most expensive market in history is an extremely dangerous game. Second, do not panic, but do not be naive either. There is a difference between long-term investing and ignoring reality. Long-term investing means you buy great businesses at fair prices and hold them for decades. It does not mean you buy overpriced businesses and hope they somehow become fairly priced. Quality and value still matter. They have always mattered. They will always matter. Third, have a plan for what happens if the market drops significantly. Not because I am certain it will happen tomorrow, but because being prepared is always better than being surprised. Ask yourself, if the market dropped 30 or 40% tomorrow, would I be a buyer or a seller? If your answer is seller, then you are not investing from strength, you are investing from fear. And decisions made from fear are almost always the wrong decisions. I have been investing since I was 11 years old. I have seen bull markets that seemed like they would never end. I have seen crashes that felt like the world was falling apart. And through it all, I have learned one truth above everything else. The fundamentals always win in the end. You cannot permanently separate stock prices from the actual value of the businesses behind them. Right now, there's a gap between prices and value that I have rarely seen in my lifetime. That gap can continue for months, even years. Markets can stay irrational longer than most people expect. I did not know exactly when the dot-com bubble would burst. I did not know exactly when 2008 would hit. But I knew both were coming, and I prepared accordingly. The $373 billion is my preparation. At 93 years old, I look back on my career and I ask myself one question. What is the most important lesson I learned in 60 years of investing? And the answer is always the same. The market will always give you opportunities, but only to those who were prepared when those opportunities arrive. Preparation means having cash when others are in panic. It means having knowledge when others have only hope. So that's what $373 billion really means. It is not fear, it is preparation. It is not pessimism, it is patience. It is 60 years of discipline saying, I will not overpay just because everyone else is overpaying, and I will be ready when the prices finally make sense again. I may no longer be the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, but the lessons I have spent a lifetime learning do not retire with me. They belong to everyone who is willing to be patient enough to follow them. So please, whatever you do in the markets in the coming months, do not let excitement replace judgment. Do not let fear of missing out push you into decisions you cannot defend. The greatest investment opportunities in history always came after the greatest moments of fear, and the greatest losses in history always came after the greatest moments of greed. Right now, in early 2026, ask yourself honestly which moment we are in, and then invest accordingly. Thank you. Stay patient, stay wise, and always remember that in investing, the tortoise always beats the hare.